I'm a very stable genius.
You're a very stable genius. They can tie a knot in your hair.
Oh, I
You
can.
can't do that.
That's good.
Hello and welcome to the QUACKCAST. This is QUACKCAST number 480. I'm Ozone Ocean, and with me is Pit, Baines, and Tance. Hello, you people.
Hello. I forgot that we're actually recording audio this time, and I was waving, and then I realized nobody could see it.
Yeah, unfortunately, the QUACKCAST is audio only. Or maybe fortunately, because we all get to be naked, which is my favourite part of the QUACKCAST. So, this on for QUACKCAST 480, we're talking about style. Emma Claire, she did this post about styles, which is something based on this whole Sailor Moon thing, that people are sort of posting pictures of Sailor Moon in their own style. And so she used that as a jumping off point to talk about how her own style developed and how people develop styles. So, we're going to chat about that in this QUACKCAST. But first, I'm going to bring up the comic feature. QUACKCAST gave us a lovely little feature this week, which was Daily Doodle. The Daily Doodle. So have a look at the Daily Doodle.
Hello, this is QUACKCAST, and the feature I've selected for this week is The Daily Doodle by Haraya, and it is rated E for everyone. The Daily Doodle is an amazing daily journal comic that chronicles the reality that we are all currently experiencing, life in the middle of a global pandemic. The illustrations by Haraya, drawn starting mid-April, showcase the germophobia and paranoia of life indoors and on the streets with an unknown presence lurking in the darkness. This is quite an important and interesting topic to document in a comic, as many people can relate to it worldwide. The art is drawn in color and a very cute style. It is amazing that the update schedule is so frequent and very professional. Remember what it is like to miss Jollibee as you are eating instant mee goreng, and read The Daily Doodle by Haraya, rated E.
And that was our feature. Quay gave us the Daily Doodle, and Pit gave us the burp. So... Alright.
That was
That was Baines in pain. Something happened.
Yeah, that was me.
Oh, really?
I just plugged in my headphones, and the volume normally goes down automatically on the computer, and it didn't.
Oh, right. Yes, I've had that.
So I got my face blown off.
My
brain blown off.
You can see Baines, and he 100% looked like Arnold Schwarzenegger at the end of what was it? Where he's on Mars, and then you go outside.
Mars Attacks.
It was.
Maybe it was Total Recall.
Yes.
Total Recall. Yeah.
Bug eyes. Claymation face. Well, yes, that was our feature, the Daily Doodle. Okay, so after that, we have the featured music. Gummelus has given us the theme to a mystic from Wanzerby. Oh, sorry, I should say Wanzerby. I can't pronounce it properly. It's an African name. Mystic from Wanzerby.
Oh.
Wanzerby? Wanzerby.
It makes you want to pronounce it in German.
It does. Wanzerby. Maybe it's Wanzerby. I don't know. Wanzerby.
There were some German colonies in Africa. You know what? I'm not going to presume anything. I'm not going to.
There were a lot of German colonies in Africa, and then they got taken over by British because of the Second World War. Or the first. I can't remember.
There were also French ones, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
So, colonization is a terrible thing. Nasty. Okay. So, in the Mystic from Wanzerby, Long, dry, dusty roads, desert adventure, hot winds, mirages, and magic shimmering in the heat haze of the hot red sun above. This music is full of fire and hot spice of far North Africa. It sounds like a techno Tinariwen, which is a Tuareg band. It sounds like that. So, I hope you enjoy Mystic from Bunzerby. Take it away, Gumwallace. And that was Gumwallace's doing the theme for the Mystic from Bunzerby. Okay, and it was by Delcino or Delcino, rated M. So I hope you enjoy that music. I love that. It's a very beautiful sounding track. Okay, styles, guys. Style. Well, we did a little Patreon video, as we do. We always do our Patreon videos. And yeah, you got to see us talking about our styles.
Lip.
Except
And
for
lip.
Tance. Oh yeah, mainly we talked about lip styles.
I did talk about my style and lips. I just didn't talk about my style, period.
Yeah, Tance
But I
was
did
telling
talk
us all about her lips.
Not my lips. Lips in all my hands.
We had this great big long conversation about how we do lips and for different expressions and the evolution
It
of
was
our
interesting,
lips.
I thought. Very cool.
Yeah, it was absolutely very interesting.
It's very, regardless of how realistic, quote unquote, or unrealistic, quote unquote, your style is, it's very interesting what, we might choose to put in, what we choose to take out. In terms of lines and details, there's a lot that goes into it. It's very cool and very long Patreon video, actually.
Yes, it's the longest one we've
really
done.
Cool. Yeah, it was really quite neat, I thought. How much upper lip do you draw? How much lower lip? All that kind of stuff. That's really cool to me.
Yeah, so guys, go become our patron. Patron, yeah, okay. That's the correct pronunciation. Go become our patron and listen to us talk about lips and
Yes.
style.
And don't give us no lip. Or actually,
Yeah.
you can in the comments.
Yeah, you can.
We'd like it if you would. So.
Go ahead.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, I didn't talk about how I do lips really, except male lips are the hardest ones because you can't define, the more you define the male lips, the more feminine you make the male face. So that's tricky. You have to have the art of only subtly defining lips. They were indeed. Okay.
Saw a little kerfuffle.
Go to our QUACKCAST to hear it. Okay. I mean, not QUACKCAST, our Patreon. Right then, guys. Styles. Tance, your style is very distinctive. Reminds me a bit of Tintin in a way. I'm not sure. It's Like, I can see.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's.
Oh, you can't imagine how well, how awesome you make me feel right now. Because I grew up on Hergé and Tintin, and his work has definitely been one of my biggest inspirations. I loved the way that he drew stuff, the level of detail in the backgrounds and the abstraction on the faces without leaving out the expression range that comes with the character. I love that, and cannot presume to be good enough for that. But I'm really glad that you saw it in my style, because Hergé's style is a very big inspiration for me.
Oh wow!
So,
Because you've got that lots of line work, and you draw buildings and people's bodies and expressions and stuff like that. But his is more stylized for people's faces. You're more realistic in style. But you've got definitely the buildings and architecture backgrounds and all that kind of stuff. Very much in his style. If anybody's familiar with Tintin and you've ever seen the lush, complicated urban streetscapes and things, and the way he does rooms, like you could walk into one of those places and it would could really exist in there.
Yeah, almost like his work, not mine, is like a blueprint almost. You could basically create blueprints out of everything he has drawn in terms of background, and especially also the cars. The way that he draws cars is basically like he dropped the model in his frames, and I loved that. I remember I used to look at the frames where he has a lot of background work, and see how he did things. I really like it.
Yeah. I used to do the same thing with Asterix and Obelix. Because it's such beautiful, complicated, rich stuff.
Yeah.
So
with that.
Yeah. Would you say that looking at that helped you develop your style? Did you look at that to think, oh, this is how I want to draw, I'm going to draw like this?
Yes and no, in the sense that I used, like, for me this was the way to make comics, in a sense, because the biggest, like, growing up, I didn't have a lot of access to, for example, American comics or manga, until I was at least like in my mid-teens, let's say. So the biggest, for me, the established way to do comics was the very European one, like with the very specific grid layout, of squares and oblong frames in rows, not so much changing up the layout of pages, and having the dynamic be in the angles within the frame. And so I sort of, when I decided I wanted to make comics, this was my go-to. But later on, seeing other people play around with layouts and play around with how to create a page for certain effects, wanted me to experiment a bit with that. I still don't really experiment as much as I would like with layouts, but I'm trying to push my boundaries. But originally, when I created comics in the first place, my idea was I will make a European style comic. I didn't say it like that to myself, but that was how I started. The natural thing for me was that.
Okay. So that sort of directed you towards a particular way of doing things.
Yeah, and strong lines. And I also have this aversion for some reason to put the fingernails on people.
An aversion, so you don't put them on.
Yeah, it's not that I can't, or I just don't want to, in a sense, and I think that comes from Erzegen, because he also doesn't use fingernails.
Or pupils.
Yeah, that I didn't follow. I really like to draw eyes and eyebrows and stuff. I find them extremely expressive, and I want more detail.
Yeah.
There. So I didn't follow that.
You do have a specific style. Oh, go on.
Yeah, no, just the fingernails. I don't know. I don't know why I don't draw. I don't like them very much, I guess.
The sound they make is very disturbing. That's probably why. They scrape on stuff.
Your characters can't be tortured. They're immune.
Yeah, the only one that gets fingernails, I guess, is Iris, because she paints them. I have to. So
it's part of the femme fatale uniform, so to speak. Yeah.
Well, you have a very specific style that is your own, that's very distinctive from a lot of other people. You know, you can point out, even from back in your Wolf days, you could point out, you know, that a specific style, even though, like, it's more refined in Without Moonlight and Brave Resistance, but you can still see that lineage.
In Brave Resistance, I only do the coloring, so.
Okay, yeah.
So that's Fit Face's style of line work, more than mine.
True, but you know, there's the coloring still sort of connects it. But in your style, it's like particularly faces. You put a lot more lines and detail in a face than people would normally do for expressions. Like most people will be afraid to do that because obviously it often ages a character, or it you know, overly defines something about them. But you handle that very well. The internal lines, like, you know, around the nose and mouth, that kind of thing. And
I think that for some reason, I think that carries over from my writing, in the sense that when I describe in my novels the faces of people, especially when it involves, when I want to show, not tell, a character's status, in the sense that if they are tired, or if they are very harrowed or whatever, you know, I will describe whether there are creases on their face, or how shadows play with their face and the sculpture of their face. So I think that this has carried over to my illustration, in a sense, and especially the lines around the nose and under the eyes, I feel convey a lot of information about the health and tiredness levels and energy levels, and a lot of side information, if you like, about the person. So I need to put, and I'm glad that I didn't know that this was a thing that people avoid, because I would be too scared to do it. By the time I realized, I had already developed a way of doing it, and it was okay. So,
oh yeah, definitely. People are quite scared of putting those in. I
just didn't know. I was naive to the danger, and I
how about you guys? Like, when you draw faces, like, do you recognize you have distinctive styles? Like, it took me a long time to recognize that I had a distinctive style in Pinky TA, particularly because I didn't even realize I was just drawing how I draw. I never intended to create a style. I just thought, I'll just try and draw as realistic as I am able to in the confines of a comic. So I was sort of thinking, if anything, I was thinking of like Pitface had described in the QUACKCAST video, in the Patreon video, of heavy metal. But I wasn't thinking I'll do the same style as this. I was sort of thinking that that gives me license to draw in my own way, because say in heavy metal comics, Metal Hurlant, it's everybody has very individual styles. It's all based on their own thing. And so what I was thinking was, okay, it's okay for me to do my own thing and to try and be as realistic as I can, just like they've done, rather than thinking, yeah, I will draw like this. So yeah, that was my reasoning.
I missed part of that. Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
We can.
Okay. When I see the way you draw faces, the first word that comes to my mind is statuesque. I don't know if you talked about that at all, but did you ever study off of like statues, like
Yeah, I did,
old
actually.
Roman-esque type? Did you?
Yeah, some of my earliest drawings were like just based on classical statues and neoclassical and all that kind of stuff. That was because I did fine art training, so yeah, that's what I based myself. I didn't base myself. That's what I learned to sort of draw.
Yeah.
Features and faces and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Oh my god, that's interesting. Wow. I didn't know that was visible in my style.
Yeah. And they've got very definite planes to that. But I was thinking probably either that or somebody who is also probably practiced off of statues is that I can never pronounce the name, Byrne Hogarth. Those anatomy books. The dynamic anatomy books. Yeah. I used to study off of those quite a lot too, but I mean, it seems like a very strikingly similar kind of style when it comes to faces, at least, because is that the wind coming through? Sorry, I'm going to shut the window in a second. It's getting windy out, but anyway, there are very distinct kind of planes to the face where light hits, and like you could tell, like this part of the cheek. This is the nose, and it looks very.
Yeah,
I can't
defined.
think of the word, but you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, defined. Yeah. You got it.
Yeah, absolutely. That is an impression that I get from your stylos. The very stylized, larger than life, I would say, illustration of a face.
Yeah. I'm not very good at doing soft faces and rounded features and things like that. I find it easier to do like more geometric kind of features and harsher lines. It's just how I'm wired. So yeah, that's what most of my faces end up looking like.
You'd be at home making propaganda posters.
Oh, absolutely.
Suits that you're making a militaristic type of comic.
Yes. Because in reality, people's features are a lot softer. It's not a common thing to have people with hard features. You know, and harsh lighting. Harsh lighting isn't often a thing. But yeah, that's how I've ended up doing my stuff. I've tried to modify that a bit. So in Bottomless Waitress, I deliberately tried a different style in that I use only two colors to do like shading. So we have a highlight color and a plain color, or plain color and highlight. So that's what I've done, which has forced me to, approach things slightly differently. So I can't be as complex in my shading. It has to be very simplified. And that means, often I have to make compromises, and I can't give people as, sharper planes as I used to in my work, because it looks wrong if you're doing that with two colors. So I have to, to soften people's features a bit. Because, if you give people really harsh lines when you're just using two colors, then all the women will look like men. That kind of thing. So I still try and do it with
have a whole
poly.
bunch of pinkies.
What's that?
Then you have a whole bunch of pinkies running around.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, because that's Pinky's particular trait. I've tried to do that with Polly because she's still pretty angular, but I can't really do that with Frances at all because she's more of a Marilyn Monroe kind of person, and
Yeah.
So I had to change it up a bit.
Yeah, she's very soft.
Yeah.
Soft.
So thank you guys for noticing that. That's really interesting.
So you have a style, but you have different ways that you can wield that style then. You have the harsher, sharper way, and then you have the softer kind of way that you've been embracing.
Yes, attempting anyway. It's not natural for me, so. Yeah.
Okay.
That's, a new thing.
Yeah.
How about you guys? Have, you deliberately sort of leaned into a style, or?
Yeah, several times, and then I think lately, definitely, actually, I have. It's changed over the years, from things that I'm inspired by and whatnot, but I, at the moment, am changing it a little bit, doing this lately, but I've like the way I used to make my comics was that the coloring would be super saturated. I would finish a page and then I would up the saturation and the contrast. And then that would make things really bold, also very dark oftentimes.
Yeah.
And back when I used to do my pencil work, when I used to color Putrid Meat with colored pencils, I would still do that, and that gave it a very rough kind of look, which I liked for Putrid Meat. It looks very messy and very somebody took it and rubbed it on a dirty sidewalk, and I like that for Putrid Meat. But it doesn't suit the things that I'm doing now. And I have come a ways away from that, but I don't want to completely get rid of my kind of griminess. So I've been changing my line quality a little bit. I've been kind of experimenting with that. I like being able to translate especially skin and muscle mass and stuff with as few lines as possible. And I'm still working on that a lot, but I like how things look when it can be you can tell that there's a blob or a mass of something here on a body without being here's shit ton of lines to make it realizable,
Yeah.
So I've been playing with that a bit, as well as different ways to shade. These are basically things that I need to update a lot, but coloring also, you've mentioned it on the couple pages that I've put up lately, Oz, is it's a little bit more muted now. And so, and those two things kind of go hand in hand, because I notice if I use a lot of line work, especially if they're thicker lines, and I color in the ways that I have been, I'm not very happy with it because it's just kind of too much stuff. It's just too much stuff. So I've kind of been editing my style in the sense of what how much I put in according to line and color. And I'm also trying to edit a little bit the way I do some face things, like lips we were talking about. I won't talk about it here because you have to be a patron. But yeah, it's my style. I think I do have an absolute style. Somebody once said it's visceral, and I like that word a lot because it doesn't just mean that there's guts everywhere, but I think it almost has a tactile sense to it. I like to put like dots on skin a lot because it makes it look like it's porous, or that's something that I like to do. I also like to put a slight little bit of baggage under the eyes, just a little bit. I've been changing the way that I do noses a little bit. I highlight the bridge in a slightly different way, and I try not to give everybody super high cheekbones now, but a lot of people still get them because it's the way that I like to draw faces. It's easy. It gives it some dynamic, but I don't know. There's just some general things that I've been changing where I think it's still very recognizable that it's mine, but it's also evolving in a way. Not necessarily. Yeah, it's I think it's evolving, which I think is very natural. Anyway, it does a lot of blabber, but
go on, please.
I'm not totally sure this is the case, but are the lines thinner, like around characters and stuff, or is it just less detail that makes it seem better?
It's a little bit of both. I'm trying to use thinner lines, and unfortunately, I'm in a place right now where I'm using GIMP, and if I use, I'm trying to find a good medium between having like a hard edge, because I don't like using the feathery edge stuff. Having a hard edge that's between 1.2 and 1.5, because when you go, which is how big the pixel is of your brush.
Yeah.
So 1.2 is just above drawing like with 1 pixel wide line, and that's a bit too small. And then the 1.2 is just it's kind of barely there. But then the 1.5, even though it's just that minor bit bigger, it looks super thick in comparison, and I don't like that either. And so I'm kind of I think where I'm kind of settling is I'm at the 1.2, and then if I make some parts slightly bit thicker, that'll work for how it meshes with how I color. And then I also, now another thing that I'm starting to do is I am coloring the outlines too. So I think that adds a little something extra kind of nice to it. But
it does. I didn't even notice that, but I noticed like a lot of art that looks really cool to me. Like I'll sort of examine it a little closer, and it's like, oh, they're not doing a black line. It's a lot of animation too. Like I'll look at it and like, what is it? Like it looks really cool, but they'll use like some kind of different color. Yeah, it's really.
I think that's why I like it. Is it reminds me of that animation style a little bit. Sorry, go on, Oz.
I was just gonna say I've just been recently moving away from doing colored outlines and gray outlines. I always have done gray outlines because then I set it to multiply, and then they take up whatever color I use to color in the figure. And now for bottom swatches, I've just started to do black outlines. So that's a new thing for me. So I'm going the opposite direction.
There was before we go into line work, I just wanted to mention that, and I don't know if you have already talked about that, stop me. But a thing that is very characteristic in your style face is that you have a lot of expression in the lower half of the face. As like you don't necessarily need to look at someone's eyes and eyebrows to know exactly what it is that like how they are emoting or what it is they're feeling. The lower half of the face is just as expressive as the upper half of the face, which I find to be very distinctive of your style. I would recognize
thank you.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah. And I think I was kicked in to kind of have to do that because Bones, you never see his eyes. So I kind of had to do that. And I really liked, Judge Dredd and stuff like that. And I liked like the old kind of gnarly heavy metal, like kind of Rat Pink artwork before that was like where the mouths would be. I can't describe it in a way where it isn't just showing everybody, but where it's like the mouth is drawn in an exaggerated way, like to one side, and like the lip will be like there'll be like a defined line at the bottom draw of the lip that really makes it look like the whole part of the face is just kind of being pulled like that. I really liked that for a while, and I still do. But yeah, I agree that the mouths are the more expressive part of my art, or of my faces, and I want to even that out a little bit. That's another thing where I've been thinking about is I want to incorporate more expressions with the mouth, but I also want to be able to play a little bit more with like eyebrow expression and stuff. So, and I know this is all technical stuff, but technical stuff is basically what makes our artwork, and what makes our styles. These are the choices we make that we incorporate into our styles, and that's what fundamentally makes it. So
okay, yeah, exactly. I find noses a real ongoing challenge for me. Noses, because that's a 3D
hard.
Yeah, it's a 3D extrusion from the face. Hard to do a nose look without defining it too much and looking too
especially
big.
the nostrils.
Yes, I hate nostrils and noses. They are a pain in the ass.
Especially in specific angles where it makes everything look ugly if you're not very careful. But then if you don't draw like the nostrils or the underside of the nostrils, the angle of the face looks off completely. So you have to do it. But then when you do it, everyone looks like a pig. And and I find myself when I make these panels, I usually erase and redraw for like a gazillion times, and I never. And up to the point where I say, okay, it is what it is. Leave it. Go on.
Because then you look at it too much, and like the nose is like the windsock of the face. Like it determines where you're looking and stuff. And if you change it just a little bit and it's not correct, and it makes everything almost in uncanny valley territory, almost more, I think, than eyes can sometimes, or that kind of thing, or smiles, which they all go into that. But if the nose is off in a uncanny way, it's like everything's off then.
Yes,
exactly. It's like this very obnoxious azimuth that the eye looks for in order to understand the rest of the face and its position in the 3D space. So you cannot avoid it, and you always have to struggle with the aesthetics of it. But thankfully, though, once you're done, it doesn't stick out as much as when you draw it, at least for me.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think this is another really interesting part of stylization, maybe even more so than lips, is that seeing the different way people's take.
We're going to get controversial on this episode.
I know. I just had to go there. These divisive times, but but like I really like seeing the different way people interpret noses in the way that they draw. Like if you look at anime, for instance, and this is a generalization because anime has a lot of different ways actually that people draw noses when you get down to it. But the way you see it a lot is kind of like the small triangle, you know, and part of the reason for that is especially during animation and whatnot. So they don't have to focus on like drawing the nostrils in each frame and where does it go on this face that is very stylized in the first place, you know. So it makes it kind of easier, then it doesn't detract attention away from the eyes and stuff. So it's and American animation does that too, where it's just like you might have like one nostril, like a little dot for the nostril, and then just like a little slope for part of the nose, you know. Or then you have other people that like can draw the full blown thing and it looks great. Or and I think there's quite a lot of value in all of those approaches, you know. I think it's, I don't know, it's just neat. It's just neat seeing the different way that people are like, yeah, go on.
I think that the more stylized the way a face is drawn, like for example with more abstraction, the more you can get away with not drawing parts of the nose, in the sense that like the anime is and manga involves very stylized faces with very exaggerated features, like the eyes are always extremely exaggerated on the face, one way or the other, and the rest of the face is under developed, in a sense. So they can get away with just a small little squiggly line for the nose. Whereas if you have, like for example, if the way I draw faces right now, if I were to not draw the noses, and believe me, I have tried, it looks weird. It looks like someone just had their nose cut off or something, and they are which is I can't get away with not drawing the nostrils the way that I'm drawing people now, because the eyes are extremely realistic. Although I do exaggerate, I make them a little bigger than they should be on purpose, but not too big, that they wouldn't be considered realistic, quote unquote. So I have to draw the nose in a realistic way, otherwise it looks weird. And I think that the level of abstraction that you do on a face is how much you can get away with simplifying facial features.
Yeah.
It's one of the great pleasures, actually, of drawing in like a cartoonier style. Like so many times I feel grateful when I'm trying it. And it's very often it's the nose. I'm like doing the nose. I'm like, I'm so glad I don't have to draw a more realistic nose because they're so challenging.
Another thing with the styles is whether you draw 5 fingers or 4.
Oh, really? Simpsons hands.
Yeah, which is something that I don't like. I like 5 fingers, but I totally understand why people do that. Because sometimes I really like drawing hands. I have a thing for drawing hands. I love it. But there are sometimes that no matter how much I try, it looks weird. It's just the position of the hand that makes it look like an alien giant claw or something like that.
Yeah.
So,
difficult. I find when I go back and have to sharpen up my skills on certain things, the hands, almost always the hands, I'd have to go back and see to first. Yeah, that's another thing that I think hands and noses are on almost the same level of contention for people when it comes to like, oh fuck, I gotta draw this now. Because it's like they both have this weird sort of complication to them.
They do.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Oh, they do. These days, for bottomless waitress, I just do very simplified hands, and normally I would have, Pinky TA, I would have been, like second guessing myself and going, oh, like I've got to put in the fingers, I've got to make it look absolutely real, which you can do just by using your own hand as a model. But now for bottomless waitress, I often think, well, it's going to be a blob. It's going to be a vaguely hand-shaped blob, and that's what it's going to do. But I'm not going to bother with it.
That's another one. And I cannot say I have a lot of success with that. Hands belonging to different people look different, like an old hand of an old lady, for example, or a hand of a young man versus the hand of a young woman looks different. It has a different line work to it, and it's not very easy. At least for me, this is one of the challenges that I feel I have not conquered yet. And maybe the reason is that I use my own hands for models a lot. Like I look at my own hands to draw certain things. So everyone has my hands. Oh my god.
Well, same thing here too. I think that's how it is probably for quite a lot of people. I don't know. Maybe I need to sit down and draw some old ass hands and some
old ass hands.
Yeah,
you're really good at doing gnarly hands, I think.
Oh, thank you.
Often, Tense's hands are great too in her comic. I'm reading hers like front to back, and often impressed with the hands. But in yours too, like sort of the bulbous knuckles and the like sort of gnarly, like kind of very hardworking hands of like Blitzov or some of the other characters. Like they're awesome and they look like hands.
I like knuckles and forgive me, but I do like to draw gnarly fingernails. And that's where we part ways on this. Is I love to draw the fingernails at the end, because it just gives it a little bit more that, like, then you could, like, put gunk under the fingernails, or, like, you draw the cuticle on there, and, like, I don't know, it just makes it look somehow intrinsically slightly more gnarly to me, probably because I do make the big knuckles and stuff. I'm like, yeah! Like, that's where you get Bones a lot, because he's got the big veins in his hands, too, and so, like, I'm just used to having, like, get all the shit in there, Throw some hair on there. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. This is a hard scrabble dude who's punched a lot of people. Slept
Whenever
outside.
Whenever I see the hair.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say that I really like the phalanges sticking out in the hand. I like very bony hands, like very thin hand, where when the hand is in a certain position, you can see the phalanges, and I like to say that a lot. I really like when the bones on the back of the hand can
backbone.
Yeah, I really like that. High relief hands and stuff. Yeah. So I like to say that, but I'm not brave enough to do line work on that. So
shading's hard. Shading's really hard. I get back to the noses. For a long time, if I do shade things, I've been neglectful towards shading noses, especially the underside of noses, because it's hard to do it without making it look like a Hitler mustache.
Just give them all Hitler mustaches. You want it. Just give them all
Hitler mustaches. But it's like another thing that I guess you just do with practice, and that's another thing we could talk about is is practice while developing your style. I think practice is really great. And I come from a school of thought where, like you practice from realistic poses and models and stuff, and that's the way I like to be. But I think when it comes to people who want to, like to just get good at drawing and stuff, yeah, like practice from realistic sources, but like, I don't know, sometimes I wonder if we emphasize it too much. You know what I mean? Like, somebody will say, well, I guess when people come up and say, like, how do I get good at drawing? I don't know. Maybe I'm being too contrarian in my mind, because there's been years where I've like draw from real life. And that's great, because what that does is teaches you proportion. But I think drawing from other things that you see that aren't so realistic is also quite valid, because if it does have something that you find of value in it, learn how you can incorporate it into your style in a way that works, which probably does relate to proportion. But I don't know. I think there's a lot of room for experimentation when you develop your style. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think the biggest element in improving your art, definitely there is a lot of value in drawing from real life and stuff, but if you don't know what it is you are drawing, I don't think it will benefit you as much. And I would definitely say that knowing how the body moves and works as a theory, that is more important, because then you can understand the logic behind it. So by knowing that, for example, that the eye is a sphere in your head, or that I'm talking about very basic stuff right now, or that
but even like the musculature around the eye, how that lays and stuff, and how things lay around the mouth. Yeah,
exactly. Or that the eye socket has a specific range around the eye, which is going to be defined when you are very thin, for example, or very tired, and it's not going to be as defined in other situations. The same goes for the cheekbones. Then you can experiment a lot better and learn from how things work. If you don't know about this and you just see weird, things and values on the face, for example, then you will not be able to remember it as well, or definitely replicate it as well.
100%. I forgot about that, actually. I'm so glad you brought that up, Tanj. Back when I really started to get a lot more serious about anatomy, when I said to myself, all right, like I kind of want to get away from just having it stylized off of other styles and to have a little bit more substance to it so I can do more things with it. I learned how to draw the skeleton, and then I learned how to draw the musculature on the skeleton, and not just like standing straight like how it is on like anatomy charts, but if you look, there's different sources you could find I think in even some of that anatomy book that I mentioned before, they do that, where they almost kind of strip the skin and everything away, and you see what's underneath, and it does give you a far better understanding of how things move and fold, and it's also super interesting. So yeah, it's the skeleton, the muscular system, and then like, I don't know, then like how you dress it up, and start from the basics. But I think that's a great point. You could see how things work.
Yeah. You start from the very basics and work your way up. That's why even now.
Sorry, just one more little line. If you know how things work and how skin stretches over all the other stuff that is underneath, then you can develop your own style a lot easier as well, because the way that you will represent how this happens is going to be yours and unique to yourself. That was all. That's all. Carry on, please.
No, I was just going to say that even now, like, my characters don't start out as skeletons, but they start out naked every single time, and I put clothes on over the top afterwards. Because it's way better to understand how clothes move and all that kind of stuff if you start out with naked characters. So, yeah, that's one of the tricks behind my styles. Nudity.
Well, what about
That's
Baines?
how
What kind of
Bottomless
put Baines
Waitress
in the
came about.
corner?
We wanted Oz to save time. What was that? Sorry?
Yes.
I said, well, what about Baines? We've kind of put Baines in the corner. What about our
Nobody
baby
put
Baines?
Bainesy in the corner.
Well, you've got such a style that
Bad boy
is
Bainesy.
far more cartoonier than ours, which I think means you have a lot to say with how you do things that we probably can't really comment on.
I'm sort of like inching up to like what you're talking about understanding kind of like the bones of things and the anatomy and stuff like that. I would like to have more of that. So I haven't been doing a lot of formal study or enough real working with, references and stuff, but a little bit. I'm trying to get better with hands, more particular with how I do hands and give fingers, even in a cartoony style, like trying to give fingers what fingers need to have. Those kind of like more defined bending points and not making them too small. I think my hands were probably too small and they were very gelatinous early on. Still are, but I'm trying to get better at that because I think it's important and it makes even a cartoony style, it makes it look a lot better. So I would like the anatomy to be more solid, the hands to be more solid. So I'm working on it. And go ahead.
Do you start with like kind of a basic shape design then, and kind of work up from that?
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah.
Like a lot of times I'll do like a stick figure, and sometimes like when I'm really like disciplined, I'll do like the joints kind of roughly where I think they're supposed to go.
Yeah.
And and hopefully again, like if I'm planning it to draw stuff on different layers, so I'm like, okay, the hand is going to be here, so I'll give it its own layer. Then I can really kind of play with it, and if it doesn't work, kind of fix it and stuff like that. That's a slow process. I'm like inching up on that kind of stuff very slowly, very, very slowly.
Little inchworm.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, I'd say your stuff is.
Oh God.
Sorry. I'd say that your style is like fundamentally very expressive. Out of all of our style, I'd say you're probably the most expressive. And then Tanya.
Oh.
And then Oz and I are just like, here's faces.
I don't know. I mean, I do find little things I've changed lately. Like I'm doing a lot of like, and simple things, cartoony type things, but it's like the sort of cartoonist question of like, what do you add? What do you take away? How much? Definitely more manga, I think, influence coming in. Like I'm doing highlights in the eyeballs. A lot more. It's probably going to be always pretty soon. It'll reach that point because it does change things. I think if you're doing highlights and then you take it away, it probably would ruin things. You get that dead-eyed look.
Yeah.
But again, I think a certain style could work just with dots. Like you could do a cartoon with just dots for eyes and be very expressive, and have characters people are into. I think it could work.
Yeah.
But it's like, a long-term story. It's to do with like a long-term kind of somewhat of a consistency, I think. Or it changes gradually at least. Like if I settle on that highlights thing, then it'll probably stay for a long time.
Yeah, you don't necessarily want to
stuff like
change
that.
styles mid-comic.
Yeah.
Although people have done that. It's happened many times.
Especially when you have something that's been running a long time, it could just kind of change. And then especially if you take something like Judge Dredd, where you have so many different comics, or any kind of 2000 AD, mostly Judge Dredd, I think. But you have so many different artists coming constantly, the style's almost always changing.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's nice to see, actually. It's, well, coming back like full circle, which we really should do because we're going a bit out of time, but to the whole Sailor Moon thing where people do exactly the same picture in their own styles, and it's amazing to see that, and it highlights the differences between people by showing the same thing in different styles, but it also highlights how interesting their styles are and how specific those little affectations are to those people. So I think we should all do that. We should reiterate M's whole thing and broadcast it out, and maybe we can have some even more versions of Sailor Moon in people's styles.
All right.
So all of us have to do it now. This is all of us. To give us your Sailor Moons.
What Sailor Scout would you be?
Me?
Yes.
I don't know them enough. So I'll say Sailor Moon. Tuxedo Mask. The man one. There we go.
You'd be a supervillain. You'd be one of the effeminate supervillains.
Yes, with the blue hair and the little tiny ear studs. Posing with a blue flower as well. There we are. That's me.
Yeah. I like it.
And Baines is obviously Sailor Mercury.
I don't know what that means, but
other Sailor Moon.
Okay.
He's the blue one.
So which one are you, Pet?
I don't know. I don't know why I asked this.
You're the
Do you know
cat
that series well?
with the moon thing. All right.
The what?
Grumpy Bear? Oh wait, that's a different series.
I am a grumpy bear.
Chance is Sailor
Care Bears.
Jupiter,
Yeah.
who I think is the one with the red trousers and the
No.
long hair. No?
You're so wrong in every way that there is to be wrong.
I have
Tall,
I have-
brown hair.
What did you say?
I said Sailor Jupiter is the tall, brown-haired, sporty one that wears green.
Oh.
Like, he's from Jupiter, obviously.
I should have known.
Yeah, I am not very sporty
Or
lately.
tall.
Like the last decade, I have not been sporty, and I'm definitely not tall. So there's that. I don't know who I would be. I don't know them. So you guys have to pick for me anyway.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna pick one then. Then Tans is the little sister of Sailor Moon.
That's not her sister, that's her daughter, you stupid man.
Is it her daughter? But does she know it's her daughter?
With the pink hair?
Yeah.
Okay,
Not her. She's from the future.
Oh.
On the record, I do not trust all to pick properly for me.
Yeah, very
Is
wise woman.
this still the episode? Are we still recording?
We haven't finished yet. So,
Oh, okay.
all right, should we
I
wrap it
switched
up?
to beer. I'm not sure. That's my style.
then? Switch to beer. All right,
Coffee time ended.
let's wrap it up then. All right.
Okay.
Thank you guys.
Thank you, everybody.
for listening.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bless your hearts.
Bless your heart.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.